Barking Up the Wrong Tree by Eric Barker. Research shows that what makes students likely to be impressive in the classroom is the same thing that makes them less likely to be home run hitters outside the classroom. School has clear rules. Life often doesn't. College grades aren't any more predictive of subsequent life success than rolling dice. Following the rules doesn't create success. It just eliminates extremes, both good and bad. Two fundamentally different types of leaders. The first kind rises up through formal channels, getting promoted, playing by the rules, and meeting expectations. The second kind doesn't rise up through the ranks. They come in through the window. Entrepreneurs who don't wait for someone to promote them. The difference between good leaders and great leaders is not an issue of more. They're fundamentally different people. Your biggest weakness might just be your greatest strength. The same genes that can lead to bad stuff can actually lead to great stuff in a different situation. Most people are dandelions. They'll come out okay under almost any circumstances. Others are orchids. They're not just more sensitive to negative outcomes, but more sensitive to everything. They won't flourish in the dirt by the side of a road like a dandelion would. But when they're well tended in a nice greenhouse, their beauty will put the dandelions to shame. Creators exhibit more psychopathology than average persons, but less than true psychotics. They seem to possess just the right amount of weirdness. Too often we label things good or bad when the right designation might merely be different. To be great, we must be different. And that doesn't come from trying to follow society's vision of what is best, because society doesn't always know what it needs. More often, being the best means just being the best version of you. In the right environment, bad can be good, and odd can be beautiful. The same traits that make people a nightmare to deal with can also make them the people who change the world. Research shows that very creative people are more arrogant, dishonest, and disorganized. They also get lower grades in school. Creative people are less likely to be promoted to CEO. Dean Keith Simonton found that mildly creative people are mentally healthier than average, but extremely creative people have a far higher incidence of mental disorders. Studies show people with attention deficit disorder, ADD, are more creative. Full-blown mania renders people unable to function in normal society, but hypermania produces a relentless, euphoric, impulsive machine that explodes toward its goals while staying connected, even if loosely, with reality. Efforts to reduce aggressiveness and misbehavior in young boys did improve their grades, but also reduced their lifetime earnings. Boys who acted out ended up working more hours, being more productive, and earning 3% more than boys who didn't. So, one of the cautionary lessons of venture capital is, if you don't invest on the basis of serious flaws, you don't invest in most of the big winners. So, what we aspire to do is to invest in the startups that have a really extreme strength. Along an important dimension that would be willing to tolerate certain weaknesses. The Gospel of Thomas says, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." If you're good at playing by the rules, if you're related to those valedictorians, if you're a filtered leader, then double down on that. Make sure you have a path that works for you. If you're more of an outsider, an artist, an unfiltered leader, you'll be climbing uphill if you try to succeed by complying with a rigid formal structure. By dampening your intensifiers, you'll be not only at odds with who you are, but also denying your key advantages. And knowing yourself in terms of achieving what you want in life means being aware of your strengths. To find out what those things are, he recommends a system he calls feedback analysis. Quite simply, when you undertake a project, write down what you expect to happen, then later note the result. Over time, you'll see what you do well and what you don't. By knowing where your strengths are, you're miles ahead of the average person in terms of achieving both success and happiness. You were successful because you happened to be in an environment where your biases and predispositions and talents and abilities all happened to align neatly with those things that would produce success in that environment. Whether you're a filtered doctor or a wild, unfiltered artist, research shows the pond you pick matters enormously. When you choose your pond wisely, you can best leverage your type, your signature strengths, and your context to create tremendous value. This is what makes for a great career, but such self-knowledge can create value wherever you choose to apply it. Identify your strengths and pick the right place to apply them. You're more likely to reach the heights of success and happiness if you embrace your flaws. In the short term, sometimes being bad can be very good. A study shows that those who made a good impression got better performance reviews than those who worked harder but didn't manage impressions as well. The lessons from cases of people both keeping and losing their jobs is that as long as you keep your boss or bosses happy, performance really does not matter that much, and by contrast, if you upset them, performance won't save you. 80% of our evaluations of other people come down to two characteristics: warmth and competence. Feeling powerless actually makes you dumber. There's something we can learn from them in good conscience. They're assertive about what they want, and they're not afraid to let others know about what they've achieved. Not being nice may look promising at first, but in the long run, it can destroy the very environment it needs for its own success. To truly scale effort and success means going beyond selfishness to create trust and achieve cooperation. You need results and cooperation, and that means trust. Pirates were so successful because they treated their people well. They were democratic. They trusted one another. And they set up an economically sound system to make sure this would be the case. Since the boss could be fired at any time, he was quite focused on taking good care of his employees. So treating those around you well can lead to far greater success than selfishness, even if your goal is to make mischief. So, did this nice guy finish last? No. Autry received the Bronze Medallion, the highest award that New York City gives to civilians. Being the most productive or getting top grades isn't the only thing givers seem to excel at. It also appears to make them rich. There was a clear relationship between how much was given and how much was earned that year. The good die young isn't true. The Terman study, which followed many subjects across their entire lives, found that people who were kind actually lived longer, not shorter. But research has found that ethical people are happier. Those who donate their time to help others feel less busy and like they have more free time. There are a number of things givers can do to build limits for themselves and make sure they don't go overboard. That 2 hours a week volunteering? Don't do more. Research by Sonia Lyubomirsky shows that people are happier and less stressed when they chunk their efforts to help others versus a relentless sprinkling. Most of us deal with the same people over and over again. Betray them and they remember it. An early edge achieved with betrayal isn't worth much since it poisons what could have been a fruitful long-term relationship. Givers often take it on the chin in the short term, but over the long term, when they can meet other givers and gain the protection of matches, their reputation becomes known and boom, they go from the bottom of success metrics to the top. Don't be envious. Don't worry how well the other side is doing. Worry about how well you're doing. Don't be the first to defect. Remember, all the big winners were nice and all the big losers started off betraying. Reciprocate both cooperation and defection. But if a person cheats you, don't be a martyr. Don't be too clever. You need to be able to teach the people you're dealing with because you want the relationship to continue. When you take a job, take a long look at the people you're going to be working with, because the odds are you're going to become like them. They're not going to become like you. You can't change them. If it doesn't fit who you are, it's not going to work. Studies show that your boss has a much larger effect on your happiness and success than the company at large. It's just human nature that when people do too much and don't ever push back, they get taken for granted. You do need to be visible. Your boss does need to like you. This is not proof of a heartless world. It's just human nature. Hard work doesn't pay off if your boss doesn't know whom to reward for it. So to the best of your ability, make things longer term. The more interactions or friends you have in common with other people, and the more likely you are to encounter them again, the more it makes sense for these people to treat you well. Grit is one of the key reasons why we see such differing levels of achievement between people of the same intelligence and talent levels. Instead, regarding the failure as a learning experience, they try to build upon its lessons in their future endeavors. Angela Duckworth's research at the University of Pennsylvania shows that kids with grit are happier, physically healthier, and more popular with their peers. And giving up, when done right, can make you a huge success too. When the Navy started teaching BUD/S applicants to speak to themselves positively, combined with other mental tools, BUD/S passing rates increased nearly 10%. It all comes down to the stories you tell yourself. Be in difficult, but not impossible situations. When persistence is called for, pessimism kills grit. The world can be a harsh place. Optimists lie to themselves. But if we all stop believing anything can change, nothing ever will. We need a bit of fantasy to keep us going. Seligman found that when you shift your explanatory style from pessimistic to optimistic, it makes you feel better and you become grittier. A man who becomes conscious of the responsibility he bears toward a human being who affectionately awaits for him, or to an unfinished work, will never be able to throw away his life. He knows the why for his existence, and will be able to bear almost any how. Stories are the invisible undercurrent that promotes success in a shocking number of the most important areas of life. So, there's no shortage of evidence that stories rule our thinking and predict success in so many arenas. The story doesn't need to be accurate to be effective. But when it comes to grit, this can be a good thing. If we made all our decisions based on the odds, we'd never achieve anything risky. We'd never even try. But to survive like Viktor Frankl did, in the face of such horrors, stories can keep us going because of their inaccuracy. Stories aren't perfect pictures of the world, but they allow us to succeed for this very reason. They can keep us going and become prophecy. As long as your story is meaningful to you, it has power. So how do you find your story? There's a really simple way to do it. Just think about your death. Thinking about death reminds us of what is truly important in life. Picture your funeral. The people who loved you have all gathered to pay their respects. They're going to praise the qualities that made you so special that they will miss the most. What do you want them to say? Vonnegu's moral is that we are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be. Very often our stories are stronger than we are, and if they're meaningful ones, they can carry us through the tough times. By engaging in cognitive reappraisal and telling ourselves a different story about what is happening, we can subvert the entire willpower paradigm. Change the story and you change your behavior. Games are another kind of story, a fun one. Yet we are designing officers as if we were machines, but we're not. We can apply game mechanics to our lives and turn dull moments into fun ones. Can this make us grittier at work and lead to a successful life? Oh yeah. Anytime something feels frustrating, it's probably lacking at least one of the four. Let's break them down. Winnable. Research shows that a feeling of control kills stress. Even when you just feel you have control, stress plummets. Novel challenges.